rainy day, I went down to you and I's development at Morden Wharf on Greenwich Peninsula to talk to Tim about co-location of industrial space and residential.
The history here is really fascinating because this was marshland. It's also been a producer of submarine cable, animal feed, soap. So yeah, it's got quite an interesting history to the site.
We need about 10 million square feet of industrial space in London at the moment. Where are you going to find it?
We certainly need that space in London, that's for certain. I think it was a great opportunity for architects and designers because we are going to have to innovate, and we are already innovating. The London plan is great to accommodate that and create some new rules that we can try and intensify. That's definitely got to be done. It's a shame about the investment zones. That we were really encouraged to and hoping that investment zones would encourage that as well. They obviously dropped out of the budget last week, and we sort of put something out on that last week. It's looking at everything really. It's looking at industrial sites and intensifying them, and taking away the pressure that was put on them by other sectors that were able to pay higher prices for them. The other thing that we're finding is retrofit and refurb. And we shouldn't overlook that. There's a great opportunity there. I know it's not often the preferred route, but it should be. It should be the first thing that we look at on these sites. And we've got a number of schemes already that we're looking at that we are either refurbing or retrofitting the building, or we're using elements from the building to accommodate. The interesting thing is the sector, the change, the speed of change and technology in the sector is helping this as well, because there will be different kinds of logistics. It's not all the traditional kind that we saw many years ago, and so we are innovating on that front. So hidden spaces as well. There's loads of spaces out there that we should be using more of. We've put quite a lot out there about the well line, which is one of the hidden spaces that we found, which was a brownfield site between Paddington and Whitechapel, and we do, and that potentially could have saved 16,000 parcels an hour if we can get that to go through the politics, and we can reuse something like that. So lots of opportunities, and I think it's got to involve the combination of other uses to be able to get and free these sites up.
And local distribution hubs as well, are they likely to happen?
Yes, yeah, and different sizes, different scales. We're even looking at redundant car parks and seeing how we can utilise those, because again, it's not all about necessarily getting HGVs into the centre. Quite often you can just use the smaller vans. So there's a whole load of different schemes that are coming through that I think will show people what the potential is, and as soon as those start getting built, then I think there's great opportunities, and there's going to be some very exciting schemes coming through.
Here at Morden Wharf, this is a sort of co-location of housing and industrial space. Now, not everyone agrees that that's the answer, that there might be conflicts between the two. How do you solve those?
There is a lot of people that don't like the idea of combining residential and industrial. It's interesting because we get involved with schemes where we're looking at both. We're looking at intensifying as far as vertical, putting residential on top of industrial, and horizontal, where very similar to what Morden Wharf is, showing how they can work together. It's interesting when you look at a site. We'll look at planning applications and look at a red line, and quite often when we're putting residential inside that, co-located with industrial, and there's a lot of opposition, and yet when you just look beyond the red line, there are other sites that are already got residential on them. So it's one of those things that, so particularly when you look at a city, if you look at the City of London, most sites have got residential next to them, so we should look at this. We did a survey recently that went out to industry, and it was interesting because 8.2% of that survey said that they would live next to industrial and industrially intensified schemes. But then when we asked the question in a slightly different way, 72.4% said that they would consider living next to industrial intensified schemes and co-location. So I think we've got an opportunity there to convince that 72.4% that this is an environment, a community that can be built around industrial and intensification that suits their requirements as well, and they like it.
But I guess noise is an issue and might be solved by future technology. We were just hearing how across the river here, residents complained about the industrial space that was here before.
Yes. Yeah, and we just heard some sound outside there as well, and it just shows when you're in the city you have noise. Yes, technology is definitely improving. So we've got cameras, we've got technology that's probably allowing, certainly the HGVs will be quieter, and the reversing alarms as well. Hopefully we won't have those, but there's a whole lot of technology inside the buildings as well. I think quite often when people are considering the logistics, industrial as a neighbour, they're looking at the worst case scenario, and probably industries that go back many years. Some of the industries that we're putting in these buildings, some of the occupiers that we're putting in these buildings are very clean, very quiet environments, and there is absolutely every opportunity to co-locate together and look at the positives of co-location. I think one of the problems that we've got, though, is the terminology. Industrial intensification has negative connotations to it. Straight away you think it's getting bigger, it's getting bolder, and that's not necessarily the case. So we're going to see more schemes coming through that I think prove what true industrial intensification is, and people will I'm sure, like what they see. The reduction of lorries in the city, we've definitely seen that. Smaller vehicles, different fleets as well. So I think all those things will improve, and the different fleets and different ways that occupiers are using buildings. We have to design for flexibility, so it's still having HGVs, there's a lot of vans that we're looking for now. These are quiet vans, these are very easy to get in and out of urban areas. We're looking at bicycles and everything. So yeah, the worst case scenario is a HGV, but we're seeing a massive reduction in those.
We're here on the River Thames, and there has been great interest really in more freight on the river. Is that happening, and do you see that as a growing part of movement in London? Yes,
we're definitely. At every scheme that we're working on, we're looking at the opportunity to use the river more. We've got schemes that are right onto the Thames, and obviously that has to be a priority that we look at using the river. I think the Thames vision that has been set by the Port of London Authority is great. That shows and encourages people to try and use the river. The fact that they could look at getting 400,000 vehicles from trucks off the road in the city and 4 million tonnes of freight off. I mean, that's big figures, those are. Those have big impact on a city and the transport infrastructure. We're working on the relocation of the city markets and Smithfield and Billingsgate out to Barking, and that's we're in the early stages of that. We've got through outline planning, and that's going to a private bill, and that's going to be a great opportunity to use the river. So the market's moving out there, up to 1 million square feet of development there, and we are future-proofing that so that it can use any mode of transport really, and that's the way that we're looking at every development that we're looking at in the future. So that's, again, that would be a great opportunity to demonstrate to people how modern facilities can be created to use the river and to use different modes of transport as well. We are working on a lot of sites in the city that either they're looking at using the river now or they're looking at using the river in the future. We're certainly, and technology is helping that as well, because where a site might not be that easily connected to the river, now, with automation, it certainly should be looked at and could be in the future.
So here there's going to be Gloriana, the Queen's barge, which is going to be housed here?
Yes, the jetty, which you can see from here, that's going to be refurbed, and Gloriana is going to be housed there as well. So that'll be great when that's relocated here.
So it'll be a tourist centre, so even more mixed use, really?
Yes. Yeah, with the beach and the park and the tourists coming, all within a working environment as well, with the southern warehouse and logistics. So yeah, it'd be a bustling place and very interesting. So really, truly, when you look at it as far as industrial intensification, this is one of those sites that will be a pilot and a demonstration of it.
Great, thank you very much.
Right, thank you.